The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, the brevity of that contribution is reflective of the level of confidence in the equity of this legislation and what it's capable of achieving. Mr Speaker, it could also, of course, be indicative of the lack of the knowledge of that member about what the bill was about, because what he said bore no relationship to what this bill has in it. Mr Speaker, let's get one point absolutely clear. This bill has one purpose alone, and that purpose is to save money by cutting spending on the people who are the most vulnerable and the most needy, and their ability to get justice in the family court system and under family law. It is about cutting spending first, middle and last of the objectives of this government. And Mr Speaker, no matter how they dress it up, this piece of legislation is not justified by any evidence that it is necessary or that will achieve the positive objectives that it claims. It's not supported by those who work in the system, who understand the system, who have been through the system and who are knowledgeable about the system, and that is epitomised by the fact that the group of experts set up by the former Minister of Justice, the Honourable Simon Power, are utterly opposed to what this legislation does. And when the Ministry of Justice came out and said that this legislation aligns with what the expert reference group recommended, they said that that was not honest, that was not correct, that was not true. This bill is based on a lie, on the lie that it is sustained by what the experts set up by the original minister wanted, when it is exactly contrary to what they believe. And I want to say this, Mr Speaker, that when I went through what those experts presented to the Select Committee, and when I challenged the Minister in the chair, the Honourable Judith Collins, to answer these challenges, she was silent. Well, she wasn't silent. She got up and she embarked on a speech replete with personal abuse, but she did not answer the key criticisms that the experts on the reference group made. And those criticisms were these. They said that if this bill proceeds, it will destroy the very fabric of the New Zealand family justice system. This bill, if it proceeds, will destroy, they said, the very fabric of the family law and justice system. That was an enormous challenge. And what did the minister say in reply to that challenge? That's what she said. Nothing. There was silence. It goes on. It says the bill is based on flawed policy development without statistical or research base justifying such fundamental and radical changes. The government has moved forward with this bill, Mr Speaker, without doing the basic work to show whether or not the changes that they are making will work. And there's a reason why they've done that, because they don't care whether it works. The minister doesn't care about the damage that she will do to the most vulnerable people in our community, and that includes the children, most particularly the children. She is interested only in saving money. And if I thought the government had no option but to cut in this area, I'd think about whether the bill was worthy of support. But what I don't understand, Mr Speaker, is why this government can spend $30 million on a multinational company, Rio Tinto, that intends to pull out of this country anyway and destroy the jobs, but they've got $30 million for that. They haven't got the money to ensure justice is delivered to the vulnerable in our society. They'll pay money to Warner Brothers, $16 million on top of the 50-odd million they'd already got, to produce a film that was going to be produced here anyway. They'll spend those millions of dollars, but they won't provide for psychological reports for the kids that might be damaged because of the process of family breakdown. That is not fair, that is not equitable, that is not sustainable, and the members on the national backbenches understand that, and you can see that in their body language. Mr. Speaker, they've got money to cut the income tax rates for the most wealthy people in this country, but they will withhold legal aid, as the regulatory impact statement says in this document in my hand, produced by the Ministry of Justice. They'll withhold the money from those who need it. And this is said in the regulatory impact comment without any sense of irony, Mr. Speaker. It says this option only affects those parties who, because of their low income, are eligible for legal aid. Of course that's who it affects. They say if they can't get legal aid, they're likely to be unrepresented. Well, boy, there were some Einsteins on the group that wrote this. Of course, if they don't get legal aid, they won't be represented. And what will that lead to? Well, they own up to this, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Justice wouldn't own up to it, but they say this, the very next sentence. The opposing party may have a lawyer. This could lead to the represented party's view being put more strongly and create or exacerbate power imbalances between the parties. Of course, that's what this legislation will do. But the Minister doesn't care. She doesn't care if inarticulate people cannot have representation to articulate their case so the judge can hear both sides of the story equally. She doesn't care that this bill doesn't produce justice. Let's have a look at what that expert reference group said, because I challenged her on each of these points, Mr. Speaker, and on each of these points she remained silent. They say, and this group was made up of barristers with 30 years' experience in the family court, psychologists like Fred Seymour, that has done incredibly good work to make the family court system work, hugely respected, made up of judges, made up of people who the Minister felt were the most knowledgeable, the most experienced and the most skilled. They said this bill is not based on empirical evidence. What did the Minister say? What did she say? Nothing. They say this is, quote, contrary to extensive existing evidence of best outcomes for families and children. It's contrary to the evidence that exists of what the kids and the families need to see justice done. What did the Minister say, Mr. Speaker? She said nothing. They say it will create a two-tiered family justice system. And how do they describe that? They say, Mr. Speaker, the more vulnerable members of society will have limited access to the services to assist them in the resolution of family disputes. It's entirely foreseeable, they say, that inequalities arising from gender, socio-economic status and ethnicity will become entrenched, resulting not in savings, Mr. Speaker, but resulting in increased costs to the health, education, child protection and criminal justice systems. This bill won't even save money. It will create economic costs, because when you have people not represented before the court process slows down, it costs more money. It'll create human costs, because when people are in fundamental dispute and alienated from their partner who might be abusive, you can't expect them to front up to that person in a committee or a court without representation. It's fundamentally wrong. And anybody that knows the working of the family law system and the family court in this country knows that that is wrong. And we will come back into this chamber and we will reverse many of the things that are put in this bill, because they are wrong. They're wrong in principle and they are wrong in practice. Mr. Speaker, this bill does not deliver justice. It's a negation of justice. It doesn't deliver fairness and equity. It denies fairness and equity. It's not about the interests of the families that are in dispute, where their relationship is broken down. It's not about helping the children in that situation. It's putting obstacles in that way. Mr. Speaker, this bill is entirely wrong, and shame on the Minister in bringing it through this House, and shame on the National Party sitting opposite who will vote for it to go through and extend injustice in this country.
I call Chris Ockenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm afraid I can't probably meet the